Before we kick off this episode, I want to say we are not professionals of any kind. We are just two folks who want to talk about our 25 plus years of marriage and Jesus. Thanks for listening.
Hey, babe, how are you?
I am fantabulous. How are you?
I'm good. Well, it's been a couple weeks since we've been on here. We've been busy, which we're going to be talking about. But before we get into all the stuff that we've been doing over the past couple of weeks, do you have any God winks for today?
Yeah, and we'll get more into this as we talk the next few episodes. But, we just took a big, long trip from our house in Kentucky down to Baton Rouge, Louisiana, over to Katy, Texas, up into Colorado. So many long hours in the car. And I just thought it was kind of neat that, the traffic wasn't bad. We didn't have any issues. We had many hours in the car together and we'd never ran out of stuff to talk about. And even the nights where we had driven for 15 hours, we were still, in good spirits and getting along. And I don't know, it was just a good trip. And, I don't know. I just thought it was kind of cool the way God, we of course both prayed for safety before we left. And I know we had other people praying for us, but it was just a good trip and I really enjoyed it.
Yeah, I feel that. My God wink is also trip related, which I'm sure we'll talk a little bit about this in the third part of our series. But going into Colorado, I got pulled over for speeding and you were my witness. I technically was speeding. The speed limit was 75. I was doing 78,
maybe
77,
if that, but
78.
you were going with the flow of traffic. It's not like you were crazy driving.
I was going with the flow of traffic. We get pulled over and the guy that ended up, he comes over. Luckily, I think this had a lot to do with it. We were in your car and you're a nurse. You have all this ER nurse stickers all over your car, your old car. Mm-hmm. Along with Bucky's stuff. So the guy pulls us over.
Kid. It was a young kid.
Yeah. And so he wanted to know that, you know why I pulled you over? And I said, actually, I literally have no idea because I'm not speeding. And he said, well, technically you were a little over the speed limit. So he pulled me over, noticed that Heather was a nurse. They got to talking about emergency kind of stuff. And he ended up not writing me a ticket. Because I was only doing a little bit over the speed limit. I was going with the flow of traffic. But the two things that got his attention was Heather was a nurse. So they started talking about that. And then he noticed all the Bucky stickers. And I got pulled over right outside of Pueblo, Colorado. And so he was letting us know that if we're that much into Bucky's, which I stopped him and I said, one of us is that much into Bucky's. Mm-hmm.
I'm not ashamed.
But anyway, he said they were getting Bucky's there. So they talked about that for a little while. So my God wink is... that could have been a way worse situation than it ended up being. He ended up talking to us for probably 15 minutes.
He was a super nice guy.
Super nice. Told us kind of what to watch out for, that some areas of Pueblo are kind of bad. But we told him we were just kind of going through. But anyway, my God wink was that could have ended up ruining the rest of the trip. But it ended up was kind of a highlight of it because we met the guy he's coming over for Thanksgiving. Just kidding.
Bringing the family.
Yeah. So anyway, before we cut to the bumper, this is a 3-part series. Mm-hmm. So we're going to break up our trip and talk a little bit about why we went to those different areas and kind of some of the stuff that happened. So without further ado, we're going to get into part 1.
Welcome to Loving Our 25 to Life. I'm Heather.
And I'm Bo. Together we've been married over 25 years.
Yeah, baby!
And this is where we talk about life, love, and all the adventures we have had along the way.
Oh, wow. Whether we're sharing stories from our marriage or taking you along one of our trips, we're here to reflect on how we've made it this far and where we are headed next.
So grab a seat, settle in, and let's dive into another episode of Loving Our 25 to Life.
All right, so we want to talk a little bit about the trip. So why don't you start and tell us a little bit about how this trip even came about, and we can talk about the first part.
Yeah, so we were going to do this trip, I think, back in May,
Right.
because he had been wanting to go see his friend in Colorado, and we have not been to Colorado. Well, I've not been to Colorado since we were in college, and so in May we were going to go to Colorado, and then I got to thinking about how I would love to go visit my cousin Candy, lives in Baton Rouge.
Because Baton Rouge is on the way to Colorado.
Shut up. Let me finish the story. And it hadn't been in my brother's house in like a lot of years. And so we just started like looking at the map and realizing we could do like a humongous circle and just take 2 weeks and go from here down to Baton Rouge over to Katy, Texas, and then drive straight up through Texas into Colorado and then back home. And so we kind of mapped out the days and talked to our family and friends of when we could stay where. And it just worked out. And so then in May, I actually ended up changing jobs, and I got a different job, working different hours. And so I didn't have all the PTO enough to take off 2 weeks. So we started looking October, because Bo and I chose this year not to take a big vacation in order to like be responsible and pay off some bills, which we've done okay. Not as well as I wanted us to, but we've done okay with that. But so we started reaching out to our family and friends and kind of made a schedule of when we'd be where, and just took off and went.
I just want to say how serious we were about this. A lot of people don't know this, but we actually had another Hawaii trip scheduled for
Last
February of this year.
This past year.
This past year. And being responsible, we decided that we better not do that. And so we forewent. Is that a word?
Yeah.
Forewent. We forewent
We sacrificed
another Hawaii trip to
stay home and pay
be
off
boring.
bills. And so this will be the first year in a long time we haven't seen a beach, right?
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah, because even the year of COVID, we went to the beach. So it's been kind of sad.
So we decided we were going to do this marathon round trip, which I was looking so forward to it. We ended up driving over 4,000 miles, and that's just from point to point. Once we got to like Baton
Candy's
Rouge,
house,
we went into New Orleans and did a bunch of stuff. Once we got to Texas, we did some stuff. Once we went to Colorado, we did a lot of driving. But from point to point was 4,000 miles. And so let's talk about just getting down to Baton Rouge and how.
Well, let's talk about how we got everywhere. So I had a Mazda 3, a little bitty Mazda 3, and Bo has a Toyota Tacoma.
Right.
And so we were just kind of deciding which vehicle we want to take, whatever. And so we decided on the Mazda because it got 37 miles per gallon. 37 miles per gallon, yeah. And so we just figured on gas and stuff, it would be a better option. And then I wasn't a fan of putting all of our luggage in the back of the truck, even though we has a cover just in case stuff got ruined. So yeah, we squeezed into this little Mazda 3 for our 4,000 mile trip. But I mean, it wasn't terrible.
I fit in there just fine.
It was getting in and out that was kind of, I wish I could filmed a few times, because after we'd been in the car for like 5 or 6 hours, we'd stop to eat or use the restroom or whatever, and we're both like uncrinkling ourselves out of the car.
I have this new disease, and I don't know what it is, but my ankle.
It's called being old, babe.
I don't know. My heel. It's my heel. It's not my ankle. My heel. Whenever I sit for a long time and I get up, it's like my heel doesn't want to work. So I actually wobble. The first probably 10 minutes I'm walking anywhere, I'm wobbling because my heels hurt so bad. And so she was laughing at my misery the whole time.
And then I have hip and back problems, so I'm uncrinkling out of the car, and I can't walk straight for a few steps because of my hip and back. So we were just a sight to be seen.
Yeah.
But anyway, so we left here on a Tuesday afternoon after Bo finished with work. We drove down to Bethany's house in Harriman, Tennessee, because she was going to keep our dog Maisie for us for the 2 weeks we were gone. And then we got up at Bethany left for work at 6, and we left when she left. So she and Eric were kind enough to adopt our baby puppy for 2 weeks.
I think they had a blast watching Maisie.
Bethany said Maisie taught Holly and Tater a bunch of bad things, but I don't believe it. I think Bethany's just making stuff up.
Yeah. So we drove down to Baton Rouge, and this is also one of our only trips I think we've ever taken where we had no agenda, we had no time, we were going to take our time. And so as a result of that, 2 super cool things happened on the way down to Baton Rouge. Number one is we were actually probably 20 miles outside of Birmingham, Alabama, and you got a text from your sister-in-law, Stephanie. Mm-hmm. So talk about that.
Yeah, so Stephanie's daughter, Amanda, lives in Birmingham, Alabama with her husband, and they have a new baby that was born in May, I believe. And so I guess she had seen on Facebook where we were traveling, and she said, hey, are you going to go through Birmingham to get to Candy's? And the funny part of this story is Stephanie is the same sister-in-law we were actually driving to Katy, Texas to see, but she was in Birmingham at the time. And she said, hey, I'm at Amanda's if you want to stop by and see the baby. And I was like, absolutely, that'd be awesome. So we kind of took a little detour into to Amanda's house. And we only stayed like maybe 20 or 30 minutes. But I got to play with him and see him for the first time. And Koo and Kai, he didn't really like Bo very much.
Yeah.
Which is weird because babies usually love Bo.
He would look at me and start smiling, and he would smile, and that smile turned to a frown, and then he would start
crying. Yeah, it was so funny, but he's a beautiful baby. He's got tons of hair. I can't believe all the hair that he has. But so, yeah, we stopped there and visited with them for a little bit, and then we headed on to Candy's. And
on the way through, we go through to get down to Baton Rouge. We go through Hattiesburg, Mississippi, and so on the way through, it was right about lunchtime. We got to Hattiesburg, so we stopped for lunch, and we ate the best crystals I've ever had in my entire life. Heather did not like them, but they were so good.
I mean, I don't want to be judgmental, but the workers were a little shady. Like there was this one girl that. Literally the whole time she was waiting on us, she was FaceTiming her boyfriend. And I was like, that's just weird. When we worked, Mr. McNair would have had a fit if we even had our phones with us when we worked at Jitney Jungle.
We didn't have phones back then.
I know, but if we did.
We had were the crank up phones.
We weren't even allowed to talk to each other without getting in trouble. But so that was a bit weird. But yeah, we got crystals and
then we decided we were, 5 miles away from our college that we went. You graduated from there. I ended up transferring over, but we went to the same college, William Carey College at the time.
Now it's William Carey University.
But so anyway, we were so close to there that we decided we wanted to see if we could get on campus and drive around.
But it was so different. Like it was just, which I think years ago, I don't remember how many years ago, but a tornado came through and tore a lot of it apart. Yeah. So they've rebuilt a lot, but then they've also, I could tell where there was a neighborhood back behind the college and they bought land back there and I mean, it's just a completely different place than it was. Of course, that was 27 years ago. Yeah. So, but yeah, it was kind of cool. We pulled up to the little security kiosk and this big old boy comes out and is like, can I help you? And Bo's like, hey, we used to go to school here and we're just wanting to see the campus and how it's changed. He's like, oh yeah, man, come on in. I'm like, well, that makes me feel safe if I was a student.
Yeah. But it was fun though. There were a lot of buildings that were still there.
Yeah.
Like
your dorm.
We went over to see my old dorm and I took pictures of it and sent it to my old roommate, Damon Patrick. And so we talked a little bit about that, and
the mail room and the gift shop where I worked.
All of that stuff was still there. It was just a lot of stuff was built up, and so it was just really cool. And I think for the first time in like a long time, I had this moment where it took me back to our college days. And so I'm like remembering, we did this here. I had a class in this building. I did this, and then you start looking around, and all these people are looking at us because. I got out of the car and would go up and take pictures of all these buildings, and these people are like looking at me.
These toddlers walking all over the campus.
These people that weren't even born when we were in college there. And they're, kind of looking, and I got back in the car and I said, that's just weird. They're just staring at us. And Heather goes, you do realize we're two old people walking around the campus. And I'm like, well, I didn't think I was that old, but I guess I am. So yeah, it was fun just stopping by there and, then kind of driving around Hattiesburg and seeing some of the old places we would hang out and kind of do things. So that was fun. And then, so getting back to getting to Baton Rouge, a night before, or maybe 2 nights before we actually left, I got a text message from her cousin Candy asking us if we would be interested in going to see a concert when we got into town. And I was like, yeah, I mean, I think we'll be fine. And she's like, are you sure? Because you're going to be driving for 9 hours, 10 hours. And so I was like, yeah, that's fine. So we get into town. We literally pull into Baton Rouge. I can't remember what time we get there, 3, 4 o'clock. And just enough time to kind of put our stuff up, hug everybody, say hey. And then we were off to
the concert.
See a concert. So talk a little bit about that.
So the concert we went to was Alabama, which I wasn't really, it was one of those things where I wasn't like an Alabama super fan when they were popular back in the 80s and 90s, I guess 70s, 80s, and 90s. But I do remember listening to them a lot because they were pretty much all that was on back then. And my dad and my mom listened to country music a lot. So when we first got there, I'm all about experiences. So I just wanted to go and hang out with Candy and Scott. And she was really kind and sweet to think of us to get these tickets. And so I was like, okay, well, we're just going to go hang out and have fun, whatever. And I was like, we're going to watch this 80-year-old guy on stage try to sing. And I'll be honest, when he first came out, the first song was a little bit rough. And I was the nurse in me kept wanting to catch him because I was just waiting for him to fall, put on the yellow socks and the yellow armband so he didn't fall on the stage. But it ended up being so emotional for me because they say music just really brings stuff back, but there were so many songs that they sang that just reminded me of the good pieces of my childhood and, hanging out with mom and dad and just remembering like there were certain songs that would come on and I just remember dad telling me how much, I really like this song. And so it was just there were just a few times I got really teary eyed and I don't know, it was just kind of neat. And they performed for 3.5 hours. So we had gotten up at 4:30 Candy's time to drive. And then we didn't get back to Candy's house till like, almost midnight?
Yeah, almost midnight.
So we were up from 4:30 to midnight and we were up again the next morning, like by 8:30, 9 o'clock to get ready and go. So.
Yeah. Another cool thing was the concert it was supposed to have Mark Chestnut opening up for them. And I'm a huge Mark Chestnut fan. I'm also a huge Alabama fan, but
Not the football team.
Not the football team at all.
The band.
So we get there, like the band's coming out and they make this announcement that Mark Chestnut isn't here because he ended up having to go to the hospital. And at first we were kind of like, oh yeah, that's whatever. But it ended up, we looked it up later and he actually had some pretty bad health issues and he was in the hospital for 3 or 4 days. But the band kind of took over and
they were good.
They were really good. They sang all of his songs and they did him well. And then Heather talked about getting a little emotional during the Alabama part and I did too a little bit because Alabama was probably, as far as country music goes, that probably they are the epicenter of like my childhood, kind of all the songs there. And there's one song they sing, Roll On, talking about the 18-wheelers. And that was always that song means a lot because it was always kind of a thing. My dad was a truck driver. And so when he was gone, way before cell phones, and you had to wait till they got to their destination to call and let you know that they were okay. And so when that song, comes on, it's always kind of,
his allergies started kicking up. I looked over and he had little tears in his
everywhere in there. I don't know what they were doing.
I wasn't judging though, because there was I can't remember the song now, but there was one song I literally had tears going down my cheeks, and I'm like big baby sitting there crying at an Alabama concert. But it's just, and we'll go into this a little bit more because the next day we went to where I grew up. But I just think I don't know about for Bo, but for me as I get older, I just start to try to think about. Because, when you think about your parents, you just always think about them being your parents. You don't think about them being 40 or 45 or 50. And so we started kind of doing the math and we're like, all right, So the next day we went to my childhood home in Belle Chase, Louisiana. And we drove around the French Quarter, which we did quite a few times when I was growing up. And just thinking about like when we were doing that, my mom and dad my mom was probably younger than I am now.
Wait, I mean, probably in her 20s.
Yeah, because we were just 9, 10. And then just thinking about...
Well, she wouldn't have been 20 if you were 10.
Just thinking about things that... And I'm not going to go into detail right on this podcast, maybe in a future podcast, but there were a lot of bad memories that I have from the trailer park I grew up in. And so it was weird seeing it because in my mind it was huge. Like it was this huge trailer park. It was figure 8. I just remember, the mailboxes, blah, blah, blah. And we get there and it's like this tiny trailer park with maybe 15 trailers in it, it seemed like. And it just was like, things are so different when you become an adult and you look back at your childhood and just, I don't know, but I just thought that was kind of cool to go back and to look at all those things that are different now, but still kind of the same, like the schools I went to and the military base that used to have a big airplane in front of it that my brother and I would just, every time we went down that Belle Chase Highway, I was looking for that plane. And I don't know, it was just very, I don't know the word that I'm thinking of, but it was a very emotional weekend for me, but in a good way, just kind of putting some things to closure and I don't know, just hanging out with Kenny and Scott, and then Emily brought her baby to come hang out with us. So he was cracking me up the whole day. Like he was so much fun to be around.
Yeah. I was trying to get him to give me 5 the whole day.
And he would just look at Bo. He's 2 years, a little over 2. And he would just look at Bo and kind of give him a little smile and then run the other way. But he loved me, man. We were buddies.
We were buddies too. He just wouldn't give me high 5.
Wouldn't give you 5.
But yeah, I think one of the cool things for me going and seeing all those places is because even though you and I grew up together and we've known each other since 6th grade, I didn't know you when you lived in Louisiana. And so all these stories you've told me over the years of, living in the trailer park, or you always used to say you lived on J Street. And in my stupid head, I always thought it was like Jay, like the name J, like J Street or whatever. And then when we went there, it was like, oh, it's the letter J Street.
Yeah, they're literally like K. It's because Scott was like, where do I turn? I'm like, well, this is L Street. This is K Street. So I'm assuming J Street's next. So, here, seeing that kind of stuff. And then one of the stories you always tell is how Eric threw a rock and hit you in the head. And it was his friend. He informed me later that it was actually his friend.
But seeing like where that took place and the stories you tell me about you and your friend going across the highway, like to see if you could make it, like
on our bikes. Yeah.
And just seeing that's like, I always envision that to be like, how little kids are like, oh, I ran across the highway, but it's like a dirt road, but
it was really like a 4-lane highway.
Yeah. So just seeing that kind of stuff is kind of cool. And a little bit about if where we grew up, that can never happen. Like I can never take my kids or my grandkids to where I grew up because it's
so dangerous.
It's dangerous there, and it's like a war zone. So just the idea that you can still go back there and it's still pretty much demographically the same way that it was X amount of years ago when you lived there. So that was cool. And I got to give Scott a shout out. We went into New Orleans after we did that just to kind of drive around, and he was very emphatic that we see the same places like 10 different times. So we
kept missing the turn.
We would go around and see the same building. So he wanted to make sure that we got a really good grasp of
that one
certain spot of New Orleans. So I thank him for that. So.
Which, for those of you that have seen, is it National Lampoon's Vacation? Yeah. All I could think about was, hey kids, look, Big Ben. Because it was literally, we kept, the way you have to get on the bridge to go over to Belle Chase, it was really like one, but it was a kind of a weird intersection. So if you missed it, you had to go all the way back around. So we went around like 3 times. And then finally the 3rd time, I think he got it. And we were scooching over. But then, so this is a cool thing that I love about mine and Candy's relationship. Like, but after we made plans to go or whatever, she messaged me and she said, hey, I totally forgot. Scott and I have tickets for a Leanne Morgan comedy show on Saturday that y'all are going to be here. Do you want to go? And so I looked up the tickets and I was like, I mean, she's not I don't hate her. Like, I'll watch her little TikToks and stuff, but I didn't want to spend like $100 to go see her. So I said, no, I said, we'll just kind of drive around Baton Rouge or whatever. And so we kind of went our separate ways on Saturday. And when I realized that was going to happen, I started thinking about another cousin of mine who I haven't seen in like 27, 28 years. She and I had recently reconnected and had started talking again after a lot of years of not speaking. And so I messaged her like the week before and whatever. And I said, hey, Bo and I are going to be in Baton Rouge Saturday. Is there somewhere we could kind of meet halfway and have lunch? And so she named a place and we drove up and saw her and her husband. And it was just, that was a really cool, it was weird because we haven't probably seen each other in 20 something years. But when we sat down to have lunch, it was just like, we picked up where we left off. And it was, I think we sat there for 3 hours and talked and hung out. And it was just it was a really cool experience. And then we went back to Candy and Scott's and hung out with them. And then we left the next day.
Well, what I thought was kind of cool is, like, I knew your cousin Amy from back when we used to hang out. So, I mean, me and Amy knew each other, but I'd never met, or I never, like, her husband, they got married around the same time we did. So they've been married. A little
after, yeah.
So, but I'd never met him. And so part of me was a little worried that we're going to show up at this dinner, this lunch, and you and Amy are going to spend the whole time reconnecting, and me and her husband are just going to sit there kind of twiddling our thumbs because we don't know each other. But he ended up being like super awesome. So he and I, like, we connected just as much as y'all did. And I mean, he was a super cool guy. And so it was a fun time and just fun time reconnecting. But I do want you to go back and kind of explain, because you're saying all these names, and if it's family listening, they know who Candy is and they know who Amy is. But tell like, who are Candy and Scott to you? Why are they so close to you? And like, explain who they are, because people who aren't family, they don't know who Candy and Scott are.
Well, Candy is my oldest cousin, and her mom, so my mom has two sisters, one older, one younger. And so Candy belongs to the older sister. Her name was Phyllis. So she is Aunt Phyllis's oldest daughter. And Candy and I, it's so funny because back when we were growing up, I just always thought Candy was so cool because she was so much older than me. And I remember when she and Scott got married, and back again about ages, I just always thought of Candy being so much older than me. And she's really only just a few years older than me. But back when she and Scott would get married, she'd let me come hang out with them and help them with their baby. And I thought I was like 15 and I was babysitting this baby all the time and hanging out with them. And I thought I was, big stuff. And Candy always kind of was so super nice to me, even though I'm sure I was this annoying little cousin that she felt obligated to let come hang out with her. But just over the years, she and I have kind of stayed connected. And then my mom's youngest sister, Sandy, that Amy is her only daughter. And Amy and I grew up kind of almost like sisters, even though we lived far apart when we were growing up. Every chance we saw each other, I guess, because we were close to the same age. We had the same interest and same thing. So we were friends growing up, and then, kind of had a falling out after we got older, and we in our young 20s, and I thought I knew everything, and I was probably kind of a-hole to her, and we just kind of went our separate ways. But thankfully about a year and a half ago, we were able to kind of reconnect. And so it's been kind of cool reconnecting and talking about old times and things the stupid stuff we did growing up and hanging out and that kind of stuff. And I also think it's been really awesome to see how God has moved in all of this. Like, we talking to Amy and talking to Candy, just looking back and seeing how things were as children, and then looking back at it with adult eyes, and just seeing that things didn't have to be that way. But we've all grown. And I think that's the coolest part, is we're growing, we're maturing, we're, letting bygones be bygones and just picking up and moving forward. And God's just been working on me a lot with relationships, and, stop rehashing the past. And because I told somebody at work the other day, if you had met me 10 years ago, I was a completely different person. I was not very nice to my patients. I was not very nice to my family. I was not very nice to myself. And over the last probably 5 years. I told a patient this the other day, I said, I honestly think it's with my kids being grown and gone now, I've had time to think about things and think about myself. Because, when you're in the middle of it and your kids are going here and there, football, this and that, you're just moving from one event to the next and you're almost in like survival mode. But I feel like the last 3 or 4 years, we've kind of been in that mode of we have time on our hands and we can think about things and we can study and research. And of course, my spiritual life has been better in the last year than it probably ever has been, but it's because I've had time to invest in it. And God's just been showing me a lot about relationships. And so this whole trip was just really cool to be able to cultivate some of those relationships and think about our past. And, bad memories come up, but then you're like, that's in the past and we're going to move forward and that kind of thing.
Yeah, I do want to say something. And I want to give you all this credit. When you and I first got together, my family, we did this thing where we would always get together and like me and my brothers would just talk about all the stuff we used to do as kids. And there was a time where you just didn't like doing it. Like you didn't care about talking about the past. And you would always say like, what's the point in sitting and rehashing the past? It's gone, that kind of thing. And so like, I can see God working in you a little bit about, and now you and I can sit and talk about the past when our kids were little. And then like this trip, I mean, I think 20 years ago, you wouldn't have cared to go see where you grew up and that kind of thing. And just, I love the fact that God's working on you and like you and I are both open now to just sit and rehash kind of things that we did in the past. And I just think that's kind of cool that we're in that part of life now to where, and I get it. Like you've talked about your past, a lot of your past wasn't great. So it's like, why talk about all that stuff? And mine wasn't great or good. I mean, great or bad. It was just, I had a normal childhood, but, I can think back and remember, good and bad things, but it never occurred to me that there are people that, I don't really want to talk about the past, whatever. But
well,
now
and
we have our own past.
A lot of it too is when you would talk about your past, and I didn't realize this until the last few years with therapy and everything, but trauma blocking is a real thing because I would get so frustrated because Bo could remember all this stuff when he was 3 and 4 and 5 years old, and I couldn't. But it's because your brain literally blocks out. And I mean, there's no mystery. I talk about it to people, but I was sexually assaulted by a man in the trailer park from the time I was 5 until the time I was 9. So for 4 years, I had all that going on top of, my dad. When I was about 8 or 9 years old, he started drinking, and we had to it was just a bad situation where we ended up having to move states so he could go to rehab. It was that bad. And so my younger childhood, I just don't remember a lot of it. I remember little things here and there, but it wasn't until recently that I realized trauma blocking is a real thing. And that's why I can't remember anything from some years of my life. And if I do, they're just come in little sporadic things. But Bo can remember back from, like I said, 3, 4, or 5 years old. And I just don't we went to my very first house, the one on J Street. And I think I was maybe 3 or 4 when we moved from there. The only thing I remember about J Street is there was a curb between our house and the house next door. And in my mind, in my 2-year-old mind, it was as high as I am. But it really is only a 4-inch curb. So going and seeing that was I used to be so afraid to jump off of that thing. And now it's it's just a curb. But that's it. I mean, I love, like you said, being able to reminisce about our kids' childhood and that. But I just never remembered a whole lot from growing up because trauma blocking. But
I'm just saying it from the standpoint, it was just super cool to go into your old, where you literally grew up as a kid and just watch you and Candy talk about this is where this happened and this is where this happened. And I mean, see kind of the excitement in your eyes that, oh, this place still exists. So, I mean, that was just cool to me because I just know there have been times where it's we've just not talked about the past because the past is the past. And so I love that. I love that about us now.
It was a really good trip. I I really enjoyed it.
So we ended up spending a few days there. And just quickly, I think we would be doing everybody a disservice if we didn't talk about the food that we had while we were in New Orleans.
I forgot. Oh, yeah. So we went to this place. Speaking of childhood memories, there's a place in New Orleans called Louisiana, the one on Bienville Drive, not the other one. Not the Louisiana by the tracks. It's the one on Bienville Drive. But we had, Candy said, we're like, hey, where you want to go lunch? Whatever. She goes, how about we go to Louisiana's? And we would go there probably almost once a week when I was a kid. And we walked into that place and it looked just like it did when we were little, and it was, of course, a lot smaller. I mean, I feel like when we were little, it was this huge restaurant, but really it's not. It has part of it, one side of it is a bar, which I don't ever remember going in that bar, but I was only, 5, 6, 7, 8 years old, so I probably didn't. And then the restaurant side wasn't very big at all, and we ended up eating outside, but it was so cool to be there, and they had some of the same food even, and the glasses, like if you got a root beer, you could get the ice off the bottom of the glass. And I remember as kids, we would try to get that off and play with it. And then the bar going into the dining area, it was like a half door, like you have at a church nursery, so that the bartender could lay drinks up there for the waitresses to take to the dining area instead of them having to walk through the bar. And Candy was like, do you remember that half door? I said, yep, I remember hitting my head on that thing many a time. So, but it was their food is still so good. And their onion rings are the best I've ever had.
Those are literally the best onion rings I've ever had in my entire life.
I don't know how they do it, but they're so good. The flavor and they're so good.
I got the red beans and rice and spicy sausage, and it was Cajun. It was the real deal.
It was good. I got the shrimp po' boy, and it was so good.
So yeah, it's always fun. There are certain family members that I absolutely adore and love spending time with, and Candy and Scott are part of that crew. So it's always good to get down there and see them. And then, so I guess next time we'll talk about the second part of our trip. So when we left there and went over to Katy, Texas, and we'll talk about why we went to Katy, Texas. But the only other question I have is, from our house to Baton Rouge, we saw 0 Buc-ee's. Is that correct?
Well, we went to Richmond.
We passed the one in Richmond, but
we didn't stop because you wouldn't let me.
I wouldn't let you stop there because I knew we were going to see 18 others this trip, but we saw none the rest of the time, right? Was that correct?
I think you're right.
Yeah. So,
well, the one by Eric's house, but we didn't go that day. Yeah, we didn't stop at any. From
our house to Baton Rouge.
No.
Us.
In the car.
1 Buc-ee's, 0.
Yeah.
So 0 Buc-ee's. So that was a win so far. All right. Well, I guess we'll call it a day, and then next time we'll talk about. I do want to say this though before we do. I do want to add a little call to action to this, and that is, I know we have, family is complicated, and like Heather talked about, her and her cousin didn't speak for a long time. And what was even cool about it was when you guys got together and y'all were like, why do we not even speak? And y'all are both like, we don't even know. So it's funny that something that was so strong back then that drove, 2 people apart, and it happens in every family. Years later, you're like, it was so irrelevant. We don't even know what it was. So my challenge is to all of us, not, but just, we all have instances, and we all have people that, maybe we were close to at one time, and we've drifted apart, but, find some common ground, because.
Well, and I think I've been doing a lot of thinking about this, is it all boils down to pride. Right. Like we just had so much pride over the years, and until we allow God to take that pride away from us and mend that relationship, but as long as we always think we're right and they're wrong and we can't be friends unless they apologize, and I mean, apologize. Like Amy and I would be like, apologize for what? Because like you said, neither one of us can remember what happened, but we were just both willing to put our pride aside. And just like I said, we don't rehash the past. We don't, whatever. We just pick up where we left off, and hopefully this will be just a beautiful cousin relationship.
Yeah. And I mean, I've had issues with some of my family members, and it's like we go a couple years without speaking, and then we, it's like at the end of the day, we're all just trying to do what we think is right. And so anyway, I just want to leave kind of at least that little call to action to the end of this. And then, so next week we'll talk about the trip from Baton Rouge over to Katy, Texas, while we were going there, what all we did. And so anyway, all right, well, that's it then. All right. Love you, babe.
Love you.
That's it for today's episode of Loving Our 25 to Life. We hope you enjoyed the conversation and found something to take with you on your own journey.
Remember, love is an adventure. Sometimes it's wild, sometimes it's calm, but it's always worth it. Yes! If you've enjoyed today's episode, be sure to subscribe, leave a review, and share with someone who might need a little inspiration.
And don't forget to follow along for more episodes and vlogs documenting our travels, life lessons, and hopefully plenty of laughs.
Thanks for joining us. Until next time, keep loving life because it is the greatest adventure of all. Bye for now.